Welcome to the Elevate Media Podcast with your host, Chris Anderson. In this show, Chris and his guests will share their knowledge and experience on how to go from zero to successful entrepreneur. They have built their businesses from scratch and are now ready to give back to those who are just starting. Let's get ready to learn, grow, and elevate our businesses. And now, your host, Chris Anderson.
Welcome back to the Elevate Media Podcast. I'm Chris Anderson, your host. And today we're going to be diving into the topic of building culture within your organization, within your company, even if it's small, even if it's only got a couple people beside you. And I'm excited to bring on an expert in this topic. Years of experience, he's going to dive into that. But Manuel, welcome to the Elevate Media Podcast today.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. So, obviously, building culture, it takes some experience. It takes some background. And with that, you have plenty of. So if you could share real quick with the audience, what is your background? What makes you an expert in this topic?
Okay. Thanks for letting me share. I was born and raised in Brazil, and I was there for the first 30 years of my life, during which I was working as an engineer first. But also, I built a very nice business when I was still in college. I built a college prep course. We had over 2,000 students in any given year. Until I sold it, I wasn't born to be an engineer. I found that out during the first 5 years of my career. And then I came to the U.S. to get an MBA and make the career change. I went to Harvard, got my MBA there. After I graduated, I started a career in marketing, starting with Procter Gamble, because that was a pretty good school, still is a pretty good school for marketers. I had the fastest career path in the history of the company for more than 200 years. I made Procter Gamble only hires newly grads, and then it develops its managers and give them opportunities to grow and to have an international career if they're promising. And I made it to pretty much the top level of the company in 7 years, when the average at that time was 15. And I got there primarily because I became a corporate entrepreneur. We can dive more into that later. But I did things that I wasn't asked to do. I did things that were not in my job description, but built businesses, and built businesses fast. A lot of people think that because they are working in a large corporation, they cannot be entrepreneurs. And it's quite the opposite. If you are a corporate entrepreneur, the prospects of your career will increase significantly. In fact, there is a class at Harvard called corporate entrepreneurship. But anyways, I spent my first 10 years there. And then I became a CEO outside. I was hired to be the CEO to do a major cultural transformation in a recently privatized huge telecom company in Brazil too, but controlled by a Spanish company. They were 5 years of major transformation. It became a case taught today in the Harvard Business School. After that, I managed a large retailing company in the electronics and appliances space. Prepared to sell. It was needing a lot of changes as well. My career was made out of promoting, implementing, championing change. So in 4 years, I changed the company, prepared it for sale. We sold it successfully, and then I decided to retire at that time. During the time that I was managing this large retailer with over 600 stores, I also started up my second business, which was a consulting business that grew very fast and very profitable. We had about 30 employees serving large corporations when I sold my share to my partners. And then I decided to retire. I came to the U.S. I was a member of the advisory council of the Marriott School of Business in Utah. And they invited me to go and teach marketing, international marketing. So I decided that I was going to do that. Came to Park City in Utah, where I had a home. And, 2 months before the classes were supposed to start, I got an invitation to start up a company back in Brazil, which had money from a large media group as well as a private equity company. That was very enticing to me because the plan was to bring the company to go public. And I had never done that in my career. So I went back, we started up. The company was in the education space. We had a tremendous growth. In 2 years, we were the 7th largest education company in the world.
Wow.
I took it public in 2012. In 2014, a large private equity company bought the media company shares as well as the other private equity shares. That was back in 2014. And that's when I finally retired. I'm not working for anybody else since then, but I continue to look for opportunities to invest. Mm-hmm. In this search for investment in 2012, so 2 years prior to my retirement, I invested in a startup in Utah in the real estate space. The 3 founders were the only guys working in the business. But I felt that the business model was very nice, that they had a lot of opportunities to grow, and I invested. And initially, I was a little involved, primarily bringing investors to the company. Today, I'm still a partner there. The company has $5 billion in assets under management. We have over 40,000 apartments in 39 states. We are among the top 50 real estate companies in the U.S. And in 2019, I made my last investment also with very young entrepreneurs. I was part of the angel group who came in to do the first investment. The company is called Pura Sense. In just 4 years, they became a unicorn. They are valued at over $1 billion today. They haven't gone public yet, but they have sales of over $200 million. That's how they're going to close this year. Just to give you an idea of how significant this is, and I've worked for Procter Gamble for many years and in some years here in the United States, just 2% of the brands that are launched in any given year achieve the $100 million mark. Well, Pura has achieved 200 in just 4 years.
Wow.
And I am the coach of the CEO. His name is Bruno. And culture is a very important part of how they built that business. And hopefully we're going to be able to talk about that as well.
Yeah. Well,
yeah. So this is my background.
Yeah.
I live in Orlando now. That's where I'm talking from.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate you sharing, and just amazing to hear kind of your journey and all you've done and been a part of, and the success you've had. And yeah, and it's like you mentioned, culture is such a big part of success with businesses. So why?
No, there is one more thing that.
Oh yeah.
Why do I have the credentials to talk about this? Yeah. Last August, I launched a book on culture. It's with 2 other co-authors who are business school professors, one here in the United States. He's the third. His name is Jay Barney. He's the 3rd most cited professor in business strategy in the world. And the other one is called Carlos Julio. He's a business school professor back in Brazil. The book has been great success so far in only 5 months. It's called The Secret of Culture Change. And we have real life stories of business leaders of all sizes in all industries in several geographies who have transformed the culture of the places that they have led. So that's, I think, another credential here to present to your audience.
Yeah, and this is just really amazing. It's an honor to have you on the show and humbled to speak with you today. So, why is culture so important, to business's success?
Okay. So let me start from where any entrepreneur should start. Any business needs strategy, right? So it is very important before we talk about culture that it becomes clear to the entrepreneur what is the strategy that they want to implement in their respective companies or startups. Once that is clear, and only once that is clear, comes the next question, which is, what is going to be the culture that I want in my company that will support the strategy that I want to implement? And why is this important? Because there are plenty of studies that say that if your culture and your strategy are not aligned, the company is not going to perform well.
Okay.
Because companies where culture and strategy are aligned, and again, there are several studies that demonstrate that, they perform much better than the companies that don't have that aligned. So thinking about what kind of culture you want to have to support your strategy, it's super important. And then it comes all of the work to building that culture as you're building the business. So strategy and culture are aligned, because culture is a key ingredient in the strategy implementation. In my opinion, it's the most important ingredient in building a business that will support a given strategy. Because of that, and because strategies are not the same for different companies, there is not an ideal culture. So if you ask me, what's the ideal culture for a company? I'm going to tell you, I don't know which company are you talking about. What type of culture do they want to build that will align with the strategy? And what is the strategy?
Yeah.
So different companies can have different cultures depending on the strategies that they're implementing.
Are there main strategies that you see successful businesses use and then pair it with their specific cultures?
You love listening to podcasts, but have you ever thought about starting your own podcast? Maybe you want to build a brand, grow your business, or are looking for an excuse to talk about your favorite hobby. Whatever your reason for making a podcast, Buzzsprout is the place to start. Since 2009, Buzzsprout has helped over 300,000 people launch their own podcasts. Buzzsprout walks you step by step through the whole process and will give you powerful tools to start, grow, and monetize your podcast. Ready to get started? Click the link in the show notes to get our free step-by-step guide to starting your podcast today.
Well, again, that depends. I have been, when I was called to manage the telecommunications company, for instance, for the first 2 years, the culture was a culture of command and control.
Okay.
A culture of focusing on the technical aspects of the business. Why? Because at that point in time when I came in, we had very important goals in terms of laying out the network that were imposed by the government. It was a highly regulated industry. Okay. So all we cared about was to make sure that we were deploying the network throughout our region within the schedule. When you have a strategy like this, and it was as simple as that, we need to deploy the network with the best available technology within the next 2 years. What that calls for is a very disciplined, army-like culture. We met, we examined the plans for the next week, for the next month, for the next 3 months, and then people were given tasks, and we needed to supervise those tasks and make sure that they were happening. However, by the end of those 2 years, the monopoly that we had been granted to make the necessary investments, we were investing $5 billion per year, would cease, and new competitors were going to come in. So once the network was involved, the game changed completely, and we needed a new strategy. We needed a customer-focused strategy, so the customers would be happy with our service and not inclined to switch. We needed to be innovative to bring to the market packages of services that would appeal to the different segments. We needed to understand the customers. And so I had to make a huge change. It was command and control was not going to happen anymore. Creativity, innovation engages all of the organization. And I needed to empower everybody. So there is not a right culture. Right, okay. What there is what is the right strategy for that moment or for those next few years. And if you don't adapt, if you don't change as businesses change, and there are lots of changes taking place in the marketplace today. You look at the list of the top 500 companies 10 years ago, completely different from what it is today. I mean, technology has changed, the profile, the socioeconomic profile of the customers has changed. And if companies continue to do what they have always done, they're going to die. An example, Kodak. Kodak was the leader in the photography market. And you probably don't know this. They invented digital photography.
Okay.
They died. They're not there in the digital photography anymore.
Right.
They were reluctant to change their strategy because it was going to cannibalize their print photos business, where they made money, a lot of money. So they let that technology be discovered, be developed, and be exploited by other companies who are leading the market today. So, long answer to a simple question.
Well, I think that's a very good point, though, you make, is that as we grow and as things change, that we have to change. Like, we have to be able to adapt our strategy.
Maybe. Pure started with the same technology, with the same culture in mind, which they have nicely implemented. They have grown from zero, basically. When I entered, they hadn't sold anything, to 200 million today, but they are still on the same path. Change was not required yet. Maybe it will be in the future, but
right.
You don't need to be worrying about, now, last year I had this culture and this strategy, this year I need to have another one. If it's working, if it's promoting growth, you just keep the path and improve and try to do it better.
That's a good point too. And I think trying to navigate that and understanding like when it is the right time, like when change is needed. Like you said, if it's still growing, you can continue on with what you're doing, right?
Yeah. If there are no new competitors, if there are no new technologies, when these things happen or are about to happen, the best strategies, they see trends and they get ahead of the trends, be on top of the wave when the changes actually happen. Then the next question is, this change is going to happen. Are we with a strategy and a culture to support that strategy that is going to continue to win in this new environment? If the answer is yes, just keep going. If it is no, then the next questions are, what do we need to change and why?
Yeah.
And if that requires a change in strategy, the next question is, okay, it's a new game, it's a new strategy, new competitors, new technology. Is what we're doing in terms of building our culture consistent with what we need to do now? And many times the people who were successful within your organization in doing what you've done so far to be successful, they are not malleable. They are not prone to change. They refuse to change. And a lot of that happens, particularly in a company that was doing well before.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to question if you have the right people working with you. If not, just let them go and keep moving.
Yeah. So if someone's, starting out in their business, maybe they're not huge or they're just small, they got maybe a couple people, how can they still build a culture once they have that strategy compared to a bigger company? Is it easier or harder or simpler in a smaller organization versus a bigger? Or is a bigger a little bit simpler because of the
I think that changing or building a culture within a smaller organization, in my opinion, is easier than doing it in a large corporation. Let me tell you why.
Yeah.
Now, when I got promoted, and I'm going to get a little bit into the content of my book, which is fruit of research amongst people who have been culture change champions or culture builder champions. When I became a general manager with Procter Gamble, the business changed around the world completely. We were organized geographically, so the profit centers were the different countries. And from night to day, the company changed its organization to make the businesses be global business units. And the geographies became sales organizations and human resource organizations, meaning, for instance, I became one of the 28 profit and loss managers in the company globally because we created 7 business units and there were 4 regions. And I was assigned to be a member of the global leadership committee for the Pampers business, baby care. Mm-hmm. And also the guy responsible for the P&L in Latin America, 13 countries in Latin America. So huge change. I mean, I had to tell all of the presidents of each one of the 13 countries that now the decisions about product development, marketing, manufacturing, and the plants that they used to supervise was now my responsibility. And I would call the shots on those related decisions. Huge. So the president of the baby care division, who later became one of the CEOs of 3M, he called us on an offsite. We were just 10 guys in the global leadership committee. And he wanted to talk about what kind of culture we want to build. That proved to be one of the best seminars that I have ever participated in my life. It impacted the rest of my career. They called this guru, I forgot his name, this guy who was the authority in culture building. And we spent hours debating the definition of culture and how you identify culture. And at the end, the conclusion or the learning that was shared was, you define a culture by listening what your employees are talking about in the cafeteria, in the corridors, and in formal settings. If you're able to listen to what they're talking about, you're going to be able to define what is the strategy that the company is pursuing. So creating those conversations or enabling or motivating those conversations is a key job of the leader. Why? Because everybody talks about what the leader does. And this is what we found out and confirmed in our research, that in order to create a culture, to build a culture, you need to create stories, not tell stories, but create stories. I'll give you an example.
Yeah,
from Pura. One of the things he wanted the company to be was to be a transparent company and to be a company that was where everybody felt that they were human. They had this this desire to be in an environment where they treated people not like machines, not like soldiers, not like subordinates, but as human beings. So he doesn't have an office. He works side by side the different teams within Pura because they don't have assigned seats, assigned desks.
Mm-hmm.
So when he feels like there's a lot of going on in product development, he sits with the product development people. His desk side is the same desk size of the guy who was recruited recently out of college. They talk. That doesn't create any barriers.
Mm-hmm.
He is transparent. He said, look, today I need to leave at 4 p.m. because my kids are playing in the soccer tournament at school. I'm human. I'm a father. I like to be with my kids. It's okay if you do the same. So when the CEO of the company is behaving in that way like this, he is creating stories. When they're having lunch at the cafeteria, what is the conversation going to be about? Did you know that Bruno is sitting with us this week? And we have talked about this, and that. He is a guy who, when he has a family affair, which is important to him, he leaves at 4. So it's okay for us if we do the same. What is important is that we achieve the results, and they are month after month after month, they're achieving record sales. But Bruno is, through his behavior, creating stories that are consistent or that reflect the principles he wants in his culture. So if you have 20 employees working for you in your startup, how are you behaving? What are they talking about you? It needs, your behavior needs to reflect the principles and create the stories that will reinforce those principles and that will motivate your people to follow the same principles. What we found is something very simple. It's not the CEO or the leader or the entrepreneur, the founder, has to walk the talk. He needs his walk to talk. Because there's nothing that speaks louder in any organization than what the leader is doing, how the leader is behaving. So you need to be, as the entrepreneur, the founder, the CEO, the champion of culture building or culture change.
I think that's great because, as a leader, that starts with us, right? How we present and how we have conversations, and can your people feel comfortable enough to come to you with conversations? Is that part of your culture? I think is a huge thing. At Elevate, we're super small still. We got 3 contracted employees, but I tell them, I'm like, hey, if you guys have family stuff, let's work around it because family is super important to me. I'm going to go be with my kids when I need to be with my kids or my wife, and open that door and show them, let's have these conversations. I'll go on site sometimes with them as they do video production. And I still enjoy the creativity side. So I'll grab a camera and I'll try to get some shots and we bring it back and we're looking through them. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is mine. Just destroy me. What did I do wrong? Because these guys, have a lot more experience with the camera and doing things like that. And I'm like, okay, so you could do this better. I'm like, yeah, just let me know. I can learn. And so that opens up the door of them feeling comfortable to give me even, constructive feedback. So then if I have some for them, it allows that openness to be there.
Yeah. What the leader does speaks very loudly, and it becomes something very memorable to the rest of the organization. I'll give you a very simple example, and our book is full of these examples. When I was CEO of Telefonica, that's the name of the telecom company I was leading, first 2 years was, this is how we do it, this is what we have to do it, etc. And one of the things that we never ask our customers was how we communicated with them. Is this effective, not effective? So one day we had a very important piece of communication related to a legal change in our business that we needed to communicate to our customers. So I wanted to see the communication. I want to see the letter that they were writing to communicate to our customers. So this communications committee of 8 people came to my meeting room. I read the letter and I said, guys, it's not going to work. This is written in Greek. So they're not going to be able to understand any of that. And each one of them defended why that was right and why it was appropriate. I said, look, let's ask the boss. And they stopped, their puzzle semblance was, well, we guess you were the boss. I said, well, let's ask the boss. Follow me. So I was in the 11th floor. We went down to the street and I stopped people on the street. He said, look, what's your name? Would you have 5 minutes to talk to us? Are you our customer? We asked them if they had a phone line. If they had, they were our customers because we were a monopoly at that time, changing to becoming one of the players. And then I said, look, we wrote this letter. We want to make sure that people like you understand that there is some division here. Some think it's appropriate, some others think it's not. So we're going to read the first paragraph to you. Just tell us what you understood. And there's no right or wrong answer. So we did it with the first guy. And after we read the first paragraph, the guy said, look, I am sorry. I don't have my high school diploma. So some of the words here, I really don't understand. I'm sorry, I cannot help. And I said, well, great. 80% of our clients don't have a high school diploma. So you've been very helpful, more than you think. Thank you very much. We went to the next one. And then after 10 guys that we had talked to, the other 8 guys with me who were defending the redaction of the letter, in terms of the letter, said, look, we got it. This is not appropriate. We're going to rewrite this. We're going to check with consumers, and then we'll come back to you for approval. We said, okay, let the boss speak. Now, guess if that became a conversation in the cafeteria or in the corridors. The CEO of this multi-billion-dollar company goes to the street to talk to customers to check if a letter is appropriate. What is that? We've never seen that. What is the wisdom behind this? What is the expectation that this is creating for us and how we conduct our work? So what a lot of leaders of large companies do not understand is the power of their behavior. Everybody observes what they're doing. So if they behave in a way that is consistent with the culture they're trying to create or to change, in my case, it was a change. In Bruno's case, was creating. They are going to behave in a way that will be speaking very, very loudly to the organization.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great kind of point to wrap up on as people are, out there building their businesses, to think about that. You're a reflection of the culture. And so how are you going to do that? So, Manuel, this has been awesome conversation. I mean, can we just
use 30 more seconds to share?
Absolutely.
But what are the 6 things that these stories you create they need to have in common? Whatever is the culture you want to create. 1, they need to be authentic. If the leader is behaving in a way that is fake, he's forcing himself. No, this case that I have just shared with you, it was authentic. I really believe that the boss is a customer. So it needs to be authentic. If it is not, if you can't be authentic, leave, shut down.
Yeah.
It's not going to work. Second, you need to be the star of the story initially. You are the one who needs to go out and show. Third, it needs a clean break if you're changing the culture with the best, but point the way forward. Before we didn't talk to customers. Now we're going to have to talk to customers. Fourth, they need to speak to the hearts and the minds of consumers. A lot of people just think that if I just explain the strategy, they will get it and they will do it. No, show it. Show the responses of your behavior, how they're positive. That appeals to the heart as well. Many times they need to be theatrical. When you go out and you're interviewing people on the street, this is very theatrical for a CEO, right? Who made a CEO to do that. And finally, over time, you need to promote a story cascade. What is that?
Yeah.
You need to encourage your direct reports first, and then their direct reports to go out and do something. How do you encourage that? When you see that, go there, go to their desk and shake their hand. Say, I heard you did this last week. This is totally consistent with our culture. Great, keep doing it. Or you put their stories in the monthly letter. Or you write an email to the rest of the organization. Look, I heard that John last week did this, and that. This is great. This is exactly what we want. And then people are going to be encouraged to build their stories too. These are the 6 ingredients of successful culture building, culture changing behavior.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that and not leaving without, because I think those 6 things are huge. And so, Manuel, again, this has been a great conversation. So much value packed into this. And this, I mean, obviously this could go on hours and hours if we really dug into things. And so I appreciate what you have shared. I know people can get a lot from it. If people do want to connect with you or find out more about you or your book, what's the best place or path for them to go?
Both. Well, our book, it's called, again, The Secret of Culture Change, How Authentic Stories Transform Your Organization. Can be found on Amazon. Awesome. Very easy. And if they want to connect with me, just look for my LinkedIn profile. My name is Manuel, Manoel. The last name is Amorim, Amorim. And there are not too many with the same name on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Yeah.
Send me a message and we can talk, start a conversation.
Yeah, everyone, make sure you get connected with them. Check out that book if you're looking to get a good change or a good culture in your business, or change to a good culture, and get connected with them on LinkedIn there. So again, Manuel, thank you so much for being on the show today. Look forward to getting this out to everybody.
Okay. It was nice talking to you. Thanks for having me. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Elevate Media Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. See you in the next episode.